There are two little sounds that rule and dominate the past in Spanish. Those sounds are aba and ia. These are the sounds of the imperfect tense. So in part 2 of this series, I'll show you how to spot the telltale sign for when you should use aba and ia. Because once you grasp this concept, you will immediately start using the imperfect, just like native Spanish speakers do. This will put you light years ahead of most other students who simply have no understanding about how this actually works. Coursebook number 2 is also ready for you. Click the link below this video to download it. Alright, so let's begin. The verb to visit is visitar. Counting the syllables, we have bis-i-tar. Visitar. And to express I used to visit, we take the sound of visitar and it becomes visitaba. So here you have the aba sound of the imperfect. I used to visit, visitaba. To express my family, it would be mi familia. Mi familia. So how would you say, I used to visit my family? And don't forget to put in the personal a. Visitaba a mi familia. To express Spain, the sound is España. España. And the word for in is simply en in Spanish. En. So how would you say, I used to visit my family in Spain? Visitaba a mi familia en España. The word for summer is verano. Verano. And to say each would be cada. So how would you say each summer? Cada verano. Now let's try this. Each summer, I used to visit my family in Spain. Cada verano visitaba a mi familia en España. Now, here's where this gets very important for your Spanish. I'd like you to look at this sentence. Each summer, I would visit my family in Spain. If we isolate the meaning of I would visit, we can easily substitute this for I used to visit. So whenever you can substitute this idea of used to, that's the telltale sign that you will use the imperfect tense in Spanish. So once again, we have our phrase, each summer I would visit my family in Spain. However, you could equally say, each summer I used to visit my family in Spain. Once again, how would you say that? Cada verano visitaba a mi familia en España. The verb to study is estudiar. Estudiar. And to express I used to study, once again we will take the verb estudiar and transform it into estudiaba. So here again we have our aba sound, which means I used to study. Estudiaba. The word for Spanish is español. Español. So how would you say I used to study Spanish? Estudiaba español. To express every day, it would be todos los días. Literally all the days. Todos los días. So how would you say I used to study Spanish every day? Estudiaba español todos los días. Now I'd like you to look at this again. here we have our phrase so far. Each summer, I would visit my family in Spain and I studied Spanish every day. Notice that I have simply rephrased the idea of used to, so let's put it in red once more. Instead of I would visit, you could equally say I used to visit my family. And instead of I studied Spanish every day, you could of course say I used to study Spanish every day. This is the key, the secret to knowing when to use the imperfect in Spanish. You just have to ask yourself a question. Does it feel like used to? And if it does, if the answer is yes, that is when you will use the imperfect. So once again, how would you translate? Each summer, I would visit my family in Spain and I studied Spanish every day. Cada verano visitaba a mi familia en España y estudiaba español todos los días. As we all know, it's possible to spend time and it's possible to spend money. Now in Spanish, we have different verbs for these uses. So to spend money, the verb is gastar. However, to spend time, the verb is pasar. Now, if we wanted to express I used to spend, we'll take the verb pasar and give it that aba sound. So it becomes pasaba. I used to spend, pasaba. The word for time is tiempo, tiempo. So how would you say I used to spend time? Pasaba tiempo. To express a lot of time, it would be mucho tiempo. So how would you say I used to spend a lot of time? Pasaba mucho tiempo. The expression with my friends would be con mis amigos. Con mis amigos. So how would you say I used to spend a lot of time with my friends? Pasaba mucho tiempo con mis amigos. What's the verb to eat? Comer. And if we wanted to express eating, so the ing, the sound becomes comiendo, comiendo. To express eating out, it would be comiendo fuera, as in restaurants. So comiendo fuera, eating out. How would you say I used to spend a lot of time eating out? Pasaba mucho tiempo comiendo fuera. How would you say I used to spend a lot of time with my friends and eating out? Pasaba mucho tiempo con mis amigos y comiendo fuera. Now let's go back to our main text. We have each summer I would visit my family in Spain and I studied Spanish every day. I spent a lot of time with my friends and eating out. Each verb is highlighted in red for you because we can replace each one of these with a feeling of used to. So instead of I would visit, I used to visit, visitaba. Instead of I studied Spanish every day, you could say I used to study Spanish every day, estudiaba. And I spent a lot of time with my friends, I used to spend a lot of time with my friends, pasaba. So try to pause this slide and translate the entire thing. Cada verano visitaba a mi familia en España y estudiaba español todos los días. Pasaba mucho tiempo con mis amigos y comiendo fuera. The verb to work is trabajar, trabajar. And if we wanted to express I used to work, once again we want to get that aba sound, so trabajar becomes trabajaba. This can be a little bit hard to reach, so let's break the syllables. We have tra, ba, ha, ba. Trabajaba. I used to work. To express part-time, the phrase is a tiempo parcial. A tiempo parcial. So how would you say, I used to work part-time? Trabajaba a tiempo parcial. To say I even, it's one word in Spanish. The sound is incluso, incluso. So let's put this at the very front of the phrase. How would you say, I even used to work part-time? Incluso trabajaba a tiempo parcial. The word for a shop or store is una tienda. Una tienda. And to express in a store, it would be en una tienda. So how would you say, I even used to work part-time in a store? Incluso trabajaba a tiempo parcial en una tienda. Now let's see if we can add all of that into our main text. This is really our true goal in Spanish, to be able to fully converse. So we have each summer, I would visit my family in Spain and I studied Spanish every day. I spent a lot of time with my friends and eating out. I even worked part-time in a store. Once again, pause the video, take it step by step, build one phrase on top of the other, and see if you can translate the entire thing. Cada verano visitaba a mi familia en España y estudiaba español todos los días. Pasaba mucho tiempo con mis amigos y comiendo fuera. Incluso trabajaba a tiempo parcial en una tienda. At the start of this video, I mentioned that we had two sounds that dominate the past. And we've been working a lot with this sound of aba. So we had visitar going to visitaba, estudiar, estudiaba, pasar, pasaba, trabajar, trabajaba. Now I'd like to switch over to the sound of ia, and this is used with verbs that end in ir or er. For example, the verb to live. This would be vivir, vivir. Now, if you wanted to express I used to live, meaning somewhere, you would take the sound of vivir and it becomes vivía. So here you have that ia sound, vivía, I used to live. How would you say I used to live in Mexico? Vivía en México. The word for when is cuando. Cuando. Now look at this. We have when I lived in Mexico. Just as before, we can highlight the verb I lived and easily make a substitution here, when I used to live. So this again is your clue, your sign for the imperfect. So how would you say that? When I lived in Mexico. Cuando vivía en México. Once again, what's the verb to eat? Comer. And to express I used to eat, we take the sound of comer and it would go to comía. Comía. I used to eat. Now to express I used to eat out, we could say comía fuera. So we have comía, I used to eat, and fuera for out. Comía fuera. How would you say, I used to eat out every day? Comía fuera todos los días. The word for almost is casi. Casi. So how would you say almost every day? Casi todos los días. What about I used to eat out almost every day? Comía fuera casi todos los días. Now let's look at this. We have, when I lived in Mexico, I ate out almost every day. I'll highlight the verbs again in red because we can easily substitute the idea of used to. So instead of when I lived in Mexico, when I used to live in Mexico. Instead of I ate out almost every day, you could say I used to eat out almost every day. These are again clear telltale signs for the imperfect. So how would you translate this? Cuando vivía en México, comía fuera casi todos los días. The verb to have is tener. Tener. And to express I used to have, the sound of tener will go to tenía. Tenía. Do you remember how to say a lot of friends? Muchos amigos. So how would you say I used to have a lot of friends? Tenía muchos amigos. The word for there, actually we have three choices, but we're just going to choose one. The sound is ahí. Notice that the H in the middle is silent, so you have a and I. Ahí. How would you say, I used to have a lot of friends there? Tenía muchos amigos ahí. Now let's try to put everything together so far. We have, when I lived in Mexico, I ate out almost every day, and I had a lot of friends there. Just as before, each verb is in red. So I used to live in Mexico, I used to eat out almost every day, and instead of I had a lot of friends, you could equally say I used to have a lot of friends. All signals for the imperfect. So pause and try to translate. Cuando vivía en México, comía fuera casi todos los días y tenía muchos amigos ahí. The verb to discover is another verb that ends in IR, so it's going to take that ia sound. So to discover is descubrir. Descubrir. To express I used to discover, we take descubrir and it becomes descubría. Let's break up the syllables. We have descubría. Descubría. I used to discover. What's the word for something? Algo. And the word for new? Nuevo. So how would you say something new? Algo nuevo. Now how would you express every day I used to discover something new? Todos los días descubría algo nuevo. What I'd like to do now is tag on to the end of that this idea of something new to enjoy. So we're going to say para disfrutar. Disfrutar on its own means to enjoy, but we want to put para in front of it in this case. So para disfrutar. How would you say something new to enjoy. Algo nuevo para disfrutar. Another way that we could rephrase this naturally in English would be, every day I would discover something new to enjoy, right? That sounds very natural. Now let's highlight this idea of I would discover. You could equally say, every day I used to discover something new to enjoy. So we have our telltale sign for the imperfect. How would you say this in Spanish? Todos los días descubría algo nuevo para disfrutar. What I'd like to do now is take our full paragraph, the one we have so far. So, when I lived in Mexico, I ate out almost every day, and I had a lot of friends there. Every day I would discover something new to enjoy. Let's take our verbs and highlight them in red. In each case, we can make a substitution because it feels like used to. Therefore, we'll use the imperfect. Pause and try to translate. Cuando vivía en México, comía fuera casi todos los días y tenía muchos amigos ahí. Todos los días descubría algo nuevo para disfrutar.